know, the different holds and grips and there are all sorts of rear naked choke jokes and that sort of thing because there wasn't a lot of knowledge or expertise within reporting ranks, and so that was something else that had to develop over time.
Now, do you remember when you first was tasked with covering something like that, or whenever you kind of ended up having to do it?
I want to say maybe 93, 94, somewhere around there. Might have been earlier. Remember one of my earliest matches I covered was with a guy named Danny Steele, who's actually for a little while a classmate of mine at Kalani High School. And so my very first fight, people were sort of familiar with kickboxing, but not the other disciplines. And he was a guy. He was a good striker, but his kicks were just brutal.
Yeah. He was probably one of the hardest leg kickers back then, maybe pound for pound in the world.
Oh my God! Yeah. And it was really something to see. When you're sitting ringside, and he's just battering away at people, and then eventually the blood starts flying, and I'm covering my face with a notebook, the spectacle of it was really riveting. There's nothing like being at a fight like that in person. I think the cameras and the production sort of captured the action pretty well these days, but still, it's nothing like being close up and hearing the impact of those kind of kicks. It's just amazing.
Now, do you have any stories of Alexio? Because I know this one guy especially. He's on Twitter a lot, and he's real curious about Alexio. I guess he's a old school kickboxing fan. Do you have any kind of stories of Alexio that people may not have known?
I mean, I don't know about specific stories. The thing is that I kind of got to know him a little over time, and but by the time he finally wrapped up his career, like, you would not have been able to tell the difference between him and some dude from the Oahu's West Side, the guy with the the F-120 and the pit bulls and the guy you don't want to stare at too long in the 7-Eleven. I mean, he was a smart guy, but there's something about Hawaii that just clicked with him, and it's probably the reason I think why he was accepted here so quickly, because he was just a recognizable type of guy, in his, down to his mannerisms, but it's sort of he had kind of like this laid back attitude, which people sort of stereotype as typical Hawaiian, but he also had like that quality that locals recognize of, you don't F with this guy because he will lay you out. And that's something that resonates also with a lot of local guys here. I was I remember once I was covering a rugby tournament. Hawaii Harlequins used to have this annual tournament. I don't know if they still do. They might. But this big rugby tournament down at Kapiolani Park, and there's some pretty good action going on in the field. All these teams from different countries down here, and I think it might have been the first time Alexio had seen rugby live, and he was just fascinated. He rode up on his bicycle, just up onto the sidelines, and was watching this. And this one guy in the match had dislocated his shoulder, and of course, there's no injury timeouts. So the guy, runs over to the side and smashes his shoulder into a parking sign to get it back into its socket. Runs back on the field, and Alexi was just hooting and laughing. I mean, he loved it. He really enjoyed the kind of ethic of that sport.
Now, why do you think he kind of went so far south and ended up, in prison. What kind of happened? Did you hear anything about that?
I don't know the specifics of that. It's yeah, I guess I don't want to speculate. He was uh I don't know. I kind of wonder